Hey there, welcome to our inaugural podcast episode number 1. So this is the Alpha Omega Consulting podcast, and thank you first of all for tuning in and watching this. So who is this podcast for and who am I? I'm Dr. John Lee, and I'm an active chiropractor in practice in Irvine, Southern California, 21 years in practice. And I also run a consulting company for chiropractors who run their own business, and that's called Alpha Omega Consulting. But who this podcast is for is not just chiropractic business owners. And yes, that is my specialty, but this information that I'm going to share on this podcast and future episodes, it really can benefit anyone who runs a business, and specifically a small business or entrepreneurs. And what I aim to do is really just share tips and tools and guidance, motivation, and strategies that you can really apply to your small business, because business principles are pretty universal amongst most business categories. So even though, again, I help mostly chiropractors, a lot of what I actually teach and share is very, very applicable to most small businesses. So thanks again for tuning in. Let's get right into what this first episode is all about. And it really is about, and I thought about this, I thought, what do I want my first podcast episode to really give the message about? And I often relate to my own story and journey in going through chiropractic business. And I'm very blessed at this point to have a very, very, amazing, strong practice, that's very staff driven. We have all the systems in place. It runs very well, but it didn't just magically happen. It wasn't just like we snapped our fingers and one year it all just, became to be. It was a process. So when I thought about it, what is that one thing that really allowed me to progress in my business journey and venture? And what is it that other business owners, whether you're a chiropractor or not, what is that one thing that if you really focus on doing this, it can really propel your business to your dream practice or dream business? And when I think about it, it really has to do with the concept of being vulnerable, humble, putting your pride down, and asking for help. So I'm going to share a story, my own journey. My first 5 years of being a chiropractor, first 2 years were awesome. I worked for another chiropractor in a very successful busy practice in Northern California, and I did what's called an associateship. And I didn't get paid much, but the trade-off was I was learning a ton, and I was getting experience firsthand and really seeing how a successful business runs. Now, after my 2-year commitment to this associate position, I left and moved back down to Southern California, which was where I'm from. For whatever reason, I think a lot of it had to do with pride and being young. I was 27 at the time when I left that job. I thought that I was the greatest thing on earth as far as being a chiropractor, that I was going to be the next amazing chiropractor that this profession will see. And even though I had a great experience, I learned from a great chiropractor for 2 years, that, I was probably going to have a better way of doing things. I was going to reinvent the wheel, that I probably was going to formulate some unique, amazing things that would really propel me and let me be known in the chiropractic world. Well, what happened? I failed. So I actually, I was an independent contractor. I got one little room that I rented from another chiropractor, great guy, nice guy. And for literally 3 years, I struggled. And I thought I was going to figure things out, different ways, different systems, different clinical protocols, different styles. And I just couldn't get it going. I barely struggled to see enough new patients per week to pay my bills. I was barely making a dent on my student loans. I think I was deferring them to the max amount of time you could. I was accruing credit card debt. And so that took me about into 5 years after graduation. And I wasn't really quite making it as a chiropractor in business. And what was I doing in those 3 years? I was on an island all by myself. It was pride. I thought I was going to come up with some great ways of being a chiropractor and running a business, and I was going to succeed. I wasn't asking anybody for help. I was not being humble or vulnerable to put myself in a position to say, hey, I don't have this figured out. I need help. And the catalyst to that is my wife. And at the time, I just met her. She was my fiance. And we've been married now 16 years, and we have 4 beautiful kids. But when I met her, I knew right away she was the one. So, behind any successful man is a great, amazing woman. And that was my case. So my wife really kind of motivated me, sparked me to take life and my career more seriously. And because I envisioned, obviously marrying her, having kids, buying a house, being a provider for my family. But I knew there's no way I'm going to do that if I just keep doing and keep floundering in business as a chiropractor the way I was doing it. That I didn't have it figured. I was lost. So because I knew I had to quickly turn things around again to start a beautiful life with my wife and having kids in the future, I knew I needed to ask for help finally. That I needed to humble myself, finally admit that I wasn't the greatest gift to chiropractic, and I needed to seek help. So I called my doctor, my boss, who I worked for 2 years as an associate, and I asked him who was his best consultant or coach that he ever had. And it was a gentleman, Dr. Chuck Gibson, who I'm still friends with to this day. And luckily, fortunately, Dr. Gibson was literally 20 minutes away from my practice where his office was. So met with him. He immediately diagnosed 3 key things I was doing wrong, offered help. Initially, I declined and I wanted to defer about 6 months because my wife and I were about to get married. And I told him, I said, I just don't have the money. I need to use all the money I have to pay for the wedding, complete all this. And I told him after the wedding, I'm going to get back with you. We'll get this going. And so I remember very vividly, Dr. Chuck, if you're listening to this, he's such a genuine, authentic, great guy. And he said, John, why would you want to postpone your success? And I felt that sincerity in him, that he was telling the truth. Like he wasn't just BSing me. He could probably help me like in an instant. So I felt that in my heart from him. And I said, you know what, let's do this. Gave my credit card, committed, and instantly got to work and implemented his advice. And literally in that first month, transformed my practice and doubled it. And then we never looked back from there. Point here is that I got to the point where I finally had to admit to myself, look at myself in the mirror and swallow my pride and realize I was not going to figure this out by myself. There's no way, right? And I don't know why I and a lot of people go about business this way, right? Because through chiropractic school and my training there, what was I doing? I was learning from teachers and professors and experts and clinicians that were there teaching us how to adjust, teaching us how to examine, diagnose, teaching us how to interpret x-rays. And then when I was an associate for 2 years, what was I doing? I was learning from a very seasoned, experienced, successful doctor of chiropractic, and I was just absorbing it all in. So I don't know how it happened, but once I left there, I told myself, I think I'm good. I don't think I need any more guidance or teaching or any help or mentorship. I'm going to do this. Well, I was very wrong. I think it probably takes a very special person. I'm sure there's, people out there that do figure it all on their own and succeed. But I'd probably be safe to say that's an extremely small percentage of people. So once I got the help from my first consultant, Dr. Gibson, and I think it was about 3 years solid we worked together, then, my practice started growing and taking off. Then there were some areas that I needed more help in that, may have not been Dr. Gibson's expertise. And so I sought that out from the next consultant and expert or mentor. Learned what I needed to from them. Then I knew there was another area of my practice of business that had a hole or a weakness. So I sought that out. Maybe it was marketing. So I sought out a marketing expert and learned that. And then so on and so on. And I got into this probably period of like 10 years where I was just learning and learning and learning. And, all these were paid experts. I was willing to pay the next expert to have them teach me things that I didn't know very well. And all that allowed my practice to eventually get to what I call my dream practice at some point. And it took a while, it took a lot of work. So the message that I'm trying to share is that if you're watching this now, whether you're a chiropractor in business, whether that's several years out of school, or maybe you're a veteran, 10 plus years out of school, maybe you're 20 years out of school, whether you're a small business owner of any type, and that could be a restaurant, it could be a dry cleaner, it could be a retail shop, whatever it is, right? If you're right now currently sitting there struggling, right, not sure if you're going to make the next payroll for your employees, not sure if you can make the rent next month, my best advice is ask for help. Even if you don't have the money to pay for an expert, even if it means just reaching out to a friend or colleague who is successful in business and having the ability to put your pride away and be vulnerable and humble and say, hey friend, or hey business colleague or acquaintance, I'm struggling. Can you help me? I have no idea how to do marketing, or I have no idea how to run a staff or team meeting. I'm lost when it comes to training my employees. I don't know how to hire properly. How do you do it? How do you do your accounting? How do you do financial stuff, right? I'm telling you, there's a lot of people out there that have gone through this whole process, and they probably learned it from somewhere, from other people, or maybe they went to MBA school or something. But the point is, there's no way you're going to learn this stuff until you ask, right? Because it's just not going to magically pop into your head. You have to seek the help from others who have that knowledge and experience. And once you take that first step and that first person helps you, you're going to realize, wow, I just need to keep staying open and be receptive to learning and helping. And then when you get in a position where you can actually pay an advisor or a consultant or a coach, then you're really going to be able to absorb and learn and implement business strategies and techniques that work at a fast pace. Okay, so I think the big takeaway message is, just because you open up a business, so you have a brick and mortar shop, again, whether it's a chiropractor practice or a small business, and you open your doors, doesn't mean it's just going to automatically happen. You're very likely if it does, right? But like for chiropractors, we didn't get much training on business in school. I believe it's typically one class at the end that they give you some principles, but they just do not give you enough tools so you can actually apply it and succeed in business. All that is learned and acquired and absorbed after graduating chiropractic school. So for us as chiropractors, we really have to seek out who has information and learn it. And again, you either learn it from friends and colleagues who are willing to give that information to you, or you have to seek out the proven experts and mentors that have systems in place, that have a program that's proven to work. And, you just got to be able to make the investment, learn, and get that return on your investment in your business. Okay. So, human beings, right? Human beings, we naturally just want to do things on our own. And so if you've been doing that, again, I was that person. So I'm not here to point fingers at anybody. It took me 5 years to kind of finally figure it out, get the light bulb that went off on my head to realize I am not going to figure this out on my own. Because I was really close to considering changing careers. I thought, am I not going to make it as a chiropractor? And I'd always succeeded in the past with school. I was always very successful academically. And so it was just baffling to me how I could not translate my chiropractic education and training into real life business success. And it wasn't until I asked my first consultant, that first moment when I asked for help, that's when it all started to really take off for us. And we've never looked back. And we have an ultra successful practice now that I, literally work part-time in. I've got a great associate doc that is there as well, a great team that's trained, and all the systems, all the techniques, all the marketing that I've learned from mentors in the past and that are now in place in my business allow us to continue to have sustained success year after year after year. And I'm still always on the lookout for what areas of our business may be starting to get weak again and what areas I need to get a little more training or learning or advice from. I think we're all always learning. Okay, once we get to a point where we feel like we've reached the top, we're at the pinnacle, we don't need any more help and success or support, that's typically when your business will start to fade and diminish. Okay, I'm going to make one more kind of reference to or analogy to sports, professional sports. When you've got highly successful sports teams or athletes, boxers, track and field athletes, do they do it on their own? No. They usually have at least one coach, if not a team of coaches and trainers that support them and give them that outside perspective of how they can improve their performance on the field or during their events, right? You know, Michael Jordan, who was his coach? Phil Jackson, the great coach Phil Jackson, right? Kobe Bryant, same thing. It was Phil Jackson who came to the Lakers, right? These guys, you know, two of the greatest basketball players that ever played, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, often would give a lot of credit to Coach Phil because he knew how to get the best out of them, to guide them, give them, you know, the tools they needed from an outside perspective to help them succeed even further than they would have if it weren't for great coaching. Okay, so remember, don't stay on an island. Be vulnerable. It's okay. It's actually, you're going to be far more successful by being vulnerable, by putting that pride away, by always staying humble that I'm always trying to learn, always trying to strive to get better. All right. So I hope this helps. This is going to be a quick and short first episode, and tune in for our next upcoming episodes. And I hope this really resonates and brings you value. And, you know, if I had to summarize, it's ask for help. Okay. When you're in business and you need to improve and things need to get going, just ask for help. Okay. Don't just sit there and think, how am I going to do this? How am I going to figure this out? Ask for help, and tons of people will guide you and very willingly and happily offer you that help. All right, guys. So thanks again for tuning into this inaugural episode and podcast for Alpha Mega Consulting, and I'll catch you on the next one.